Behind the gilded doors of Buckingham Palace, a storm was quietly brewing, one that would shake the royal family to its core. In a moment that stunned insiders, King Charles III reportedly exploded in fury, accusing Queen Camilla of a betrayal no one saw coming. The cause? A missing royal heirloom and a clash of power that shattered decades of loyalty. This wasn't just a domestic dispute, it was the beginning of a royal unraveling no one expected. Amid the polished marble halls and time-worn portraits of Buckingham Palace, an unsettling storm was quietly brewing, one far removed from the public eye. Insiders now claim that a fiery and unexpected confrontation erupted between King Charles III and Queen Camilla, a moment so explosive that it left even seasoned palace staff stunned. The very heart of the monarchy, long seen as the epitome of British tradition and restraint, was now the stage for a personal crisis of historic proportions. The event reportedly took place just weeks after King Charles's coronation, a ceremony designed to usher in a new era of stability following the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. But instead of peace, chaos loomed. Royal sources suggest that Charles, often composed and cautious, was uncharacteristically unrestrained, allegedly raising his voice in sheer frustration over something both deeply symbolic and personally devastating. The tension had been mounting for months, hidden beneath rehearsed smiles and carefully choreographed public appearances. Behind closed doors, however, the relationship between the newly crowned king and his queen had been deteriorating. What made this moment so significant wasn't just the raised voices, it was the subject of the outburst. The mysterious disappearance of the king's most treasured possession, the pinky ring he had worn since the early 1970s. What should have been a moment of unity following the crowning of a new monarch turned into a flashpoint of accusations, long-simmering resentment, and emotional collapse. It was a side of the royal family rarely seen, and perhaps a turning point in a relationship many believed was rock solid. The object at the center of the storm was no ordinary trinket. It was a royal pinky ring, a gold signet passed down through generations, first worn by King Charles in the early 1970s. Engraved with the royal crest and crafted from Welsh gold, the ring symbolized not just the crown, but Charles's personal connection to his lineage. Its value wasn't merely monetary. It carried the weight of history, legacy, and identity. After the coronation, when the pomp and spectacle faded, Charles noticed something that sent chills down his spine. The ring, always kept in a private and secured chamber within the palace, had vanished. Reports from within the palace suggest a full-scale internal search was quietly launched. Royal aides, staff, and even top-level security scoured every possible location, retracing steps, reviewing surveillance, and questioning anyone who might have had access. But, despite their efforts, the ring remained missing. As hours turned to days, concern turned into alarm, and alarm turned into quiet panic. This wasn't just a missing object. It was an unfolding mystery that cut to the heart of the crown. What made matters worse was the eerie silence surrounding its disappearance. No one had seen anything. No one admitted to knowing anything. For King Charles, the loss felt deeply personal. The ring had been with him through decades of royal duty and personal transformation. It was a piece of his father, Prince Philip, a memory of his youth, and a symbol of the monarchy he was now entrusted to lead. To lose it now, at the height of his reign, felt less like a theft and more like a betrayal from within. In the royal court, where secrets are currency and loyalty is paramount, suspicions quickly took root. Among those closest to King Charles, whispers began to circulate. How could such a sacred heirloom vanish from within the palace without insider involvement? The list of possible suspects was exceedingly short, and shockingly, one name rose to the top: Queen Camilla. The very woman who had stood beside Charles through scandal, loss, and transition now found herself under a cloud of doubt. The Queen, long viewed as the king's confidant and closest companion, suddenly became the prime suspect in a royal mystery. It wasn't just the missing ring that stirred suspicion. It was Camilla's recent behavior. Palace insiders noted subtle but telling shifts in her demeanor. She had grown more assertive, more distant from Charles's inner circle, and increasingly autonomous in her decisions. She had been seen dismissing protocol, making unilateral calls about royal engagements, and, more curiously, showing an unusual interest in the king's private possessions. Though no one dared accuse her outright, The timing of her growing power and the ring's disappearance seemed too coincidental to ignore. Charles, already under immense stress following the coronation, reportedly became increasingly withdrawn. Behind closed doors, he was described as deeply conflicted, torn between his trust in Camilla and the mounting signs that something was very wrong. The idea that the Queen herself could be involved in the loss of such a significant royal artifact was unthinkable, and yet, the evidence, or lack thereof, was damning. Camilla denied everything, but the doubt had been planted, and in a family built on tradition, that seed of suspicion was more than enough to crack the surface. Camilla's transformation from queen consort to simply queen didn't happen with fireworks or fanfare. It unfolded quietly, almost stealthily, with a subtle update to the official royal website. But in the world of monarchy, even the smallest changes carry seismic weight. When Camilla's title changed after the coronation, from queen consort to queen, insiders say it sent shockwaves through the royal household. Though it appeared to be a symbolic gesture, the implications were profound. It marked a break from Queen Elizabeth II's final wishes, who had explicitly stated before her passing in 2022 that Camilla should be known only as queen consort. For royal observers, the change signaled more than just semantics. It hinted at an internal power shift. Traditionally, consorts serve in a supporting role, standing beside the sovereign without eclipsing their authority. But Camilla's growing visibility, independence, and influence suggested she had little interest in being a background figure. Over the months following the coronation, she began attending high-profile events solo, delivering speeches without prior vetting, and even making executive decisions behind palace walls. Some insiders viewed it as ambition, others saw it as overreach. King Charles, known for his respect for tradition and protocol, reportedly felt conflicted. He had worked tirelessly to prepare for his reign in Queen Elizabeth's shadow. Now it seemed Camilla was stepping out of hers and possibly into his. Though he publicly supported the change, private sources claimed he was uncomfortable with the title shift, especially given his mother's clear directives. Whether he agreed willingly or felt pressured into it remains unclear. But this moment marked a turning point, fueling tensions that had long simmered under the surface and setting the stage for a dramatic reckoning. What began as a partnership built on mutual support and loyalty slowly shifted into something far more complex. Behind palace doors, the balance of power between King Charles and Queen Camilla had begun to tilt. Subtly at first, then more obviously. Sources close to the couple observed that Camilla's role was no longer confined to ceremonial duties. She had started influencing key decisions about the royal schedule, media appearances, and even matters of state. One instance particularly raised eyebrows. Camilla reportedly canceled several of the king's engagements, claiming they didn't align with the direction she believed the monarchy should take. To some, this was Camilla simply asserting herself. To others, it was a dangerous sign of a consort exceeding her bounds. When royal aides confronted her, her response was unapologetic. "It will do him no good. The Queen knows best." The remark, while confident, shocked those who heard it. It signaled not only self-assurance, but a possible disregard for Charles's own authority. King Charles, already grappling with the pressures of following Queen Elizabeth's legacy, now faced the uncomfortable reality of being overshadowed by his own wife. He was known for his meticulous planning, his emotional restraint, and his deep respect for the monarchy's hierarchy. Camilla's increasingly bold actions left him feeling undermined, isolated, and, some say, powerless. This dynamic festered beneath the surface. Publicly, they appeared united. Privately, tension brewed. The missing ring became less a standalone incident and more a symbol of the underlying conflict. A conflict between a king trying to define his legacy and a queen no longer willing to stay in the background. The silence between them was deafening, and the stage was now set for eruption. Everything came to a head when Camilla did the unthinkable. She agreed to a private interview without informing King Charles or his senior advisors. In the royal family, where every word is weighed and every statement scrutinized, this was a massive breach of protocol. But what truly stunned the monarchy wasn't just the act. It was what Camilla said. During the interview, she shared her personal vision for the future of the monarchy, outlining bold new directions and reforms that had never been discussed publicly and, more critically, had never been discussed with the king. The moment the interview aired, Charles reportedly went pale. As he listened to Camilla speak so openly about the crown's future, he realized she was revealing plans and opinions they had only ever shared in the privacy of their home. It was a profound betrayal, not just of trust, but of intimacy. These were conversations between husband and wife, monarch and consort, sacred and strategic. To the public, the interview came off as bold and modern, but inside the palace, it set off alarm bells. Charles, who had always prized discretion, felt blindsided and exposed. The royal family has long thrived on maintaining mystery, on saying just enough but never too much. Camilla's words shattered that tradition. She had pulled back the curtain without the king's consent, and in doing so, fractured their private world. For Charles, it wasn't just a PR disaster, it was personal. This wasn't a media blunder. This was the queen speaking as though she were sovereign in her own right. And it was in that moment Charles realized the quiet cracks in their relationship had become full-blown fractures. The fallout from Camilla's unsanctioned interview wasn't confined to the media cycle. It struck deep into the very soul of King Charles. For a man known to hold loyalty and discretion in the highest regard, the public exposure of their private conversations felt like a dagger to the heart. What hurt most wasn't just that she had spoken out, it was that she had used his words, his confidential thoughts about the future of the monarchy, as her own. For Charles, who had always relied on Camilla as a trusted confidant, the act was a staggering betrayal. Behind the scenes, sources say Charles was inconsolable. He had weathered decades of public criticism, endured heartbreak, and navigated scandal. But this was different. This wasn't about the public or the press. This was about the one person he thought would never turn her back on him. To have that bond broken so publicly left him reeling. The king withdrew into himself, avoiding even his closest aides. Those around him described him as haunted and humiliated. The royal institution has endured countless internal storms over the centuries, but rarely had one felt this personal. As the days passed, Charles grew more distant, increasingly irritable and visibly tense. Camilla, meanwhile, seemed unbothered, resuming her duties, attending events as if nothing had happened. To some, her composure was admirable. To others, it was infuriating. The palace, once a place of order and formality, now pulsed with unease. The rift between king and queen had become impossible to ignore, and though no one dared say it aloud, many within the royal household wondered, had the monarchy's most important partnership already reached its end? The morning after Camilla's bombshell interview, Buckingham Palace was unusually quiet. Staff moved about nervously, casting glances down empty corridors, awaiting the inevitable confrontation. King Charles had not slept. According to palace insiders, he spent the night pacing, stewing, replaying the interview over and over again. His calls to Camilla had gone unanswered. Her absence from the palace, especially during such a critical time, only deepened his suspicions. When she finally returned just after dawn, her arrival was marked not by humility, but by defiance. She walked through the palace with her chin high, ignoring the staff who greeted her. It was not the return of a queen seeking reconciliation, but of someone who believed she had done nothing wrong. She entered the meeting room where Charles waited, his expression dark and unreadable. What followed was a moment so intense that those close to the situation would later describe it as the loudest silence Buckingham Palace had ever known. Charles wasted no time. His voice, low but trembling with rage, cut through the stillness. He accused Camilla not only of overstepping her bounds, but of humiliating him. He spoke of trust, of duty, of the monarchy not being a stage for personal ambition. And then came the words no one expected. Who stole the king's jewel? Who stole my ring? The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Camilla did not flinch. She stared at him, unmoved, her silence louder than any denial. It wasn't just about the ring anymore. It was about years of tension, rising ambition, and unspoken resentment. In that room, the monarchy's most private battle finally erupted in full view. What happened next would ripple through royal circles for weeks. After a long, tense pause, Camilla responded, not with apology, but with icy defiance. "What belongs to the king," she said slowly, "is mine." The words, laced with both entitlement and authority, struck Charles like a physical blow, but the shock didn't stop there. Without another word, Camilla reached into her designer handbag, pulled out the missing pinky ring, and placed it on the table between them. The act was deliberate, theatrical, and chilling. For Charles, seeing the ring in her possession confirmed every fear that had been gnawing at him. The object he held so sacred, a piece of his father, his past, and his royal identity, had been in her hands the entire time without his knowledge or consent. The room fell into silence once again, but this time it was electric with fury. Charles's face flushed with disbelief and rage. To him, this wasn't just Camilla taking something personal, it was her making a statement about her place in the monarchy. "You are done," he reportedly shouted, his voice shaking with emotion. It was more than anger, it was heartbreak. But Camilla didn't respond. She turned, calm and composed, and walked out of the room without looking back. To those watching, it felt like a final blow. That moment didn't just end a conversation, it may have ended the trust that once defined their relationship. What had started as a simple mystery over a missing ring had now laid bare the fault lines of a royal marriage, one cracking under the weight of power, ego, and betrayal. The ring at the center of this royal crisis wasn't just another ornament in the crown's vast collection. It was a piece of living history. King Charles's pinky ring, worn faithfully since the early 1970s, was a gift first passed to him by Prince Philip, who had received it from his own father, Prince Andrew of Greece and Denmark. Forged from rare Welsh gold and engraved with the crest of the Prince of Wales, the ring was more than ceremonial. It was symbolic. It represented lineage, tradition, and the unbroken bond between generations of monarchs. Wearing it daily, Charles had turned the ring into a quiet but visible emblem of identity. It stood as a reminder of where he came from and what he was destined to become. Through countless royal engagements, speeches, and international visits, it remained a constant, often unnoticed by the public, but deeply significant to the man who wore it. The loss or perceived theft of such a powerful symbol shook Charles to his core. To him, it was like losing a piece of his soul. The fact that Camilla had taken it without his consent, kept it secret, and returned it only during a confrontation made the situation feel all the more treacherous. And yet, the ring's legacy doesn't end with Charles. Royal tradition dictates that it will one day pass to Prince William, the current Prince of Wales. It is a thread linking the monarchy's past, present, and future. That such an object could become the focal point of a marital implosion was almost unthinkable, and yet it happened, reminding the world that even in palaces, symbols can start wars. In the days that followed the confrontation, Buckingham Palace descended into what one staff member described as a beautiful shell with nothing inside. Queen Camilla withdrew from public duties, citing exhaustion, while King Charles became more withdrawn than ever before. The air inside the palace grew thick with unease. Staff whispered about resignations, senior aides walked on eggshells, and for the first time in decades, the monarchy felt fragile. Not just in image, but in reality. Charles, once known for his diplomatic finesse, became visibly irritable and isolated. According to insiders, he stopped attending internal briefings, refused to read prepared statements, and spent long hours alone in his private study. Camilla, on the other hand, kept her distance, refusing to speak on the matter publicly or privately. Her cold silence was interpreted by many as a sign that the damage was done, and perhaps beyond repair. Royal watchers speculated endlessly, was this the beginning of a formal separation? Could the monarchy withstand such a high-profile fracture just months into a new reign? The answers remained elusive, but what was clear to all was that the trust between king and queen had been broken. Perhaps irreparably. Their once unshakable alliance, built over decades of controversy and scandal, now looked more like a fragile truce held together by protocol alone. For a monarchy that prided itself on unity and strength, the truth was impossible to hide. Charles and Camilla, for so long seen as a team against the world, now stood on opposite ends of a royal fault line, one that had finally cracked open for all to see. As tensions within Buckingham Palace continued to simmer, a surprising development unfolded across the Atlantic. Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, quietly launched her lifestyle brand, as ever, with a collection of homemade goods, from wildflower honey to decorative teas and baking mixes. Within hours, every product had sold out. The internet buzzed, social media exploded. Meghan's name dominated headlines once again, but this time for something far different: success, independence, and brand power. While King Charles' marriage hung in the balance, Meghan was quietly achieving what the royal family had long feared: turning her fame into fortune. Royal insiders had warned of this from the moment she and Prince Harry stepped down in early 2020. Now, those warnings seemed prophetic. Meghan was thriving, using her image, her story, and even her children to connect with millions of fans. Her brand launch wasn't just a business move, it was a statement of autonomy. For the royals back in London, the contrast was almost painful. While Charles and Camilla navigated crisis, Meghan was basking in adoration. The palace, already rocked by scandal and suspicion, now faced a different kind of threat: relevance. Meghan's success raised questions not just about Camilla and Charles's personal rift, but about the institution's place in the modern world. Could a monarchy struggling with internal collapse still hold the public's attention in an era driven by charisma, commerce, and individual brand? As Charles dealt with betrayal behind closed doors, Meghan was winning hearts in the open. The monarchy, it seemed, stood at a crossroads between tradition and transformation, loyalty and reinvention, silence and storytelling.